This is the story of an apartment, a missing man, and a neighbor who realized too late that someone was living much closer than anyone thought. It's a case that begins with a simple noise and ends with something far worse. When Emma Ruiz moved into the Blackwood apartments, the first thing she noticed was the quiet. The hallways were always still, the walls felt thick, and her top-floor corner unit had only one neighbor, apartment 6B, directly across the hall. But 6B was supposed to be empty. Her landlord had told her the tenant, a man in his 40s named Harold Marks, had moved out 2 months earlier. He left no forwarding address, no belongings, just an unpaid lease. So when Emma started hearing footsteps from inside 6B just days after she moved in, she thought she was imagining things. The footsteps were slow, dragging, like someone walking with an uneven weight. She brushed it off. It was an old building with old pipes and old sounds, just typical city living stuff, right? But the noises didn't stop. Every night around 3 a.m., she heard the same rhythm, step, step, scrape. A pause, then again, step, step, scrape. Always pacing, always between 3 and 4 in the morning. One night, Emma pressed her ear to her door, listening harder. She realized the sound wasn't coming from the pipes. It was coming from the hallway, right outside her apartment. It sounded like someone walking from her door to 6B's back and forth. But when she finally worked up the courage to open her door, the hallway was completely empty. Things escalated 2 weeks later. She found something wedged under her doormat, a key. It was an old brass apartment key, and it was labeled 6B. She didn't touch it with her bare hands. Instead, she carefully slid it into an evidence bag, a souvenir from her crime podcast hobby, and decided she would show it to the landlord the next day. But that night, everything changed. At 3:14 a.m., the footsteps started again. This time, they stopped directly in front of her door. Emma froze in her bed, her heart pounding. Then she heard a whisper, muffled but unmistakable, through the wood. "You found my key." She couldn't breathe. She didn't move a muscle. A light scratching sound brushed against her door. Then the footsteps retreated back toward 6B. The next morning, she went straight to the landlord. But when she explained what happened, the landlord went pale. "The key you found," he said quietly, "is impossible." He told her that the locks on all the empty units, including 6B, had been changed right after Harold moved out. No old key should exist. None. The landlord went with her back up to her apartment. But when she got to her door, the key she had bagged was gone. The evidence bag itself had vanished. Only her doormat remained. The landlord, now deeply concerned, decided to finally open 6B to reassure her, or at least to figure out what was causing the noises. He unlocked the door and swung it open. The apartment was empty. There was no furniture, no appliances, not even dust. It looked like it had been meticulously cleaned. But one thing immediately stood out: footprints. Bare footprints were pressed into a thin layer of dust on the floor, making a perfect path from the front door to the bedroom, then to the closet, and then back to the door, over and over. And between each set of prints, there was a strange dragging trail. The landlord shook his head, whispering, "No one has been in here. I promise." That's when Emma noticed the closet door. It was slightly ajar. The landlord pushed it wide open. Inside, carved deep into the drywall, were long vertical scratches, stretching from about shoulder height all the way down to the floor. And on the inside of the closet door, written in black marker, were the words, "6B isn't empty. I'm still here. Stop taking my things." The handwriting was shaky, frantic, and uneven. The landlord called the police immediately. When the officers arrived, they searched the apartment thoroughly. Inside the bedroom's air vent, they found a small battery-dead camera. In the kitchen cabinets, they found empty food wrappers. And then, behind the closet wall, after an officer noticed it sounded hollow, they found a crawl space. Inside that crawl space was a thin mattress. There were jars of water, a bucket, and clothing that matched the description of the missing tenant, Harold Marks, but Harold wasn't there. The crawl space had a second exit, one that opened into the building's old, forgotten maintenance shafts. Authorities soon discovered that Harold had been living in those shafts for weeks, maybe even months, moving between apartments through hidden access panels. He had quietly slipped back into the building right after everyone thought he'd disappeared. Harold wasn't missing at all. He had never left. He'd been living inside the walls this whole time. Investigators suspected he'd been secretly entering empty units, including his old apartment, 6B, during the night. That explained the footsteps, the whispering, and the key that mysteriously appeared and disappeared. The police tracked Harold's path through the maintenance tunnels until they reached the basement boiler room. There, tucked behind some pipes, they found a sleeping bag, and on the wall above it, written in the same black marker they'd found in the closet, was a final, chilling message. "I just wanted my home back." Harold Marks was apprehended 3 days later, found living inside an abandoned laundromat, just 2 blocks away. As for Emma, she moved out that very same week. She later said the building never felt empty to her again, because now she understood that silence wasn't always comforting. Sometimes silence just means someone is listening, and sometimes they're listening from the other side of your walls. When 29-year-old Mia Dalton rented a storage unit on the edge of town, she didn't think much of it. Rows of metal doors, flickering motion lights, and a manager who lived off-site, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. But by her 3rd visit, she started to notice something strange. Each time she unlocked her unit, she'd hear a soft click from the one next to hers, Unit 119. It wasn't a loud noise, more like someone was gently tapping the metal wall. When she mentioned it to the front desk clerk, he just shook his head. "That unit is empty," he said. "It's been empty for months." Still, every time she came by, the clicking returned. One afternoon, while she was stacking boxes, she heard something new. A voice. It was faint, muffled, but it was definitely human, coming from the other side of the wall. It whispered, "Hello?" Mia froze. "Is someone in there?" She called out, her voice trembling a little. Another whisper followed, even softer this time. "Please, don't leave." Her heart dropped. She quickly stepped outside and examined the door to Unit 119. The lock was secured. A layer of dust covered the handle. There were no footprints, no signs that anyone had been inside. She went back to the office and insisted the manager open the unit in front of her. He unlocked it, swung the heavy door open, and the overhead light flickered on. The room was completely empty. Just a cold concrete floor, bare walls, and air that felt like it hadn't been disturbed in months. There was no one inside, no speakers, no strange equipment. The manager tried to laugh it off, suggesting she'd misheard something, but neither of them looked convinced. A week later, things escalated. Mia arrived at dusk. The facility was quiet, the long aisles nearly dark. As she rolled up her door, she heard her phone start ringing from inside her car. When she grabbed it, the caller ID nearly made her drop it. Storage unit number 119. Her breath caught in her throat. Cautiously, she answered. There was no voice on the other end. Just slow, steady breathing and a faint tapping. The exact same tapping she had heard through the wall. She hung up immediately, heart pounding, and left without grabbing any of her things. The next morning, she returned with the police. Together, they opened both her unit and Unit 119 again. Both were still empty, but while inspecting the back wall, an officer noticed something, a thin vent gap running along the floor, connecting multiple units behind the scenes. Inside the vent, taped to the wall, was a prepaid cell phone, still powered on. Someone had been hiding near the vents. Someone with access. Security footage from the past few nights revealed the truth. A man slipping into the building through a side door. He was a former tenant who had once rented Unit 119. He had memorized the alarm schedule. He knew where the cameras couldn't see, and he had been sneaking into the facility after hours, quietly staying in unused units and listening to people through the walls. The police found no evidence that he had harmed anyone, but he admitted he liked hearing people close by and enjoyed whispering through the vents to see who would answer. Mia canceled her contract that same day. The storage facility upgraded its security, added more alarms, and changed every single lock. But some renters swear that late at night, they still hear soft clicking sounds from the back of the unit hallway, especially near Unit 119, and every once in a while, someone reports their phone ringing the moment they open their door from a number that shouldn't be active anymore. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more true scary stories.